Good afternoon. Thank you, Raul. Good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Glad to have you. Come on in, take a seat, grab a beverage or five to keep yourself hydrated. We'll get started in a few minutes, just once everyone gets in and gets settled, and we give people a few minutes for any technical issues. My name is Melissa. I'm with College Success Foundation. Welcome, welcome. Glad to have you. Glad you could join us. Welcome all. Thanks for being here. We'll get started in a few minutes. Yes, so good to see you too. Yes. Welcome, welcome all. While we're waiting for everyone to get in and get settled, we can keep the trend going and pop in, where you're joining from in the chat if you want to. What location or school or wherever, whatever your heart's desire. Thank you. Grab some beverages, grab a blankie if it's chilly where you are. Let's get settled in, and we'll talk about College Bound in just a few minutes. Beautiful. Love it in the chat. Thank you for popping in who you are and where you're coming from to join us today. We have practitioners from all over the state joining us to talk about College Bound. So thank you for joining. We're going to give it just another minute and then we're going to get started and get into all the good nitty-gritty stuff. Make sure you grab a beverage, stay hydrated in this winter weather. Wonderful. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. So we have time to get through our content and also just have some good scenario talking time to chat and have all that good stuff. Oh, well, that's not helpful, is it? To go to the last one. I don't want that. I want the first one. Get it together, Canva. There we go. I'm in it. I'm in it now. Welcome, everybody. My name is Melissa Kaiulani Pico. I am one of your presenters today. I am one of the Regional College Access Managers, or RCAMs, for College Success Foundation, and my region is covering King County. And I'm also joined by Amber, who I will let introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. Thank you guys so much for spending your lunch with us in our first Lunch and Learn of the series. I am based out of Yakima and I serve Southeast and South Central Washington, and so happy to have you guys.
Perfect. Okay, let's see. There we go. Okay, so our, favorite housekeeping. We are recording this session, so we're gonna send it out to you th sometime this week. And it'll have a copy of the slide deck, it'll have the recording, all that good stuff will be included and all that. So no worries if you're coming late or if you have a coworker that's not able to join, it will be sent out to everyone who registered. And then we do have a Q&A button. I don't think we do have a Q&A button. Do we have a Q&A button? I think we just have the chat, yeah? We
There's a
do have a Q&A
Q&A.
button. Perfect.
There's a
Thank you,
Q&A button
Raul.
under the more. So
Thank you. Yes, it's hidden for me. So I would say if you can use the Q&A button, we have the whole RCAM team here today, even though Amber and I are presenting. The whole RCAM team is keeping the house together, basically. So we have people looking out in the chat if you end up popping a question into there, and we'll put it into the Q&A. But we do have our RCAMs in the Q&A to monitor questions and be able to answer them or bring it to our attention later on. And then we'll also have Q&A at the end as well to just kind of talk through things. So do keep yourself on mute. That way everyone in the recording can hear presenters and hear the info. And then later on when we have questions or we prompt you that you can unmute, that will always be an option as well. Clock hours are available for this webinar. When you registered, you were asked that question if you were interested in clock hours. If you clicked yes, we will send you a form to be able to fill out and get clock hours for this session.
So at the end of the webinar, we will have a link to a post-training survey. We really encourage everyone to fill it out. It helps keep us know what content to keep and where to pivot if needed. Also, to thank you for your time, we're going to be holding a drawing for 10 $10 gift cards. Please note that also all of your responses are going to be completely confidential. So if you really want to say, like, have some constructive criticism towards us, don't worry, we will not see it. It's going to be hidden from us, but we appreciate the constructive criticism because we really want to know where to improve. And next slide, please. Okay, awesome. So today we're going to go over the legislative updates, some college bound scenarios to help you guys counsel your students, and also share a lot of resources that will help you in your day-to-day work. At the end of the webinar, we aim to give you all of the relevant legislative updates and how things have changed. We'll also review some scenarios that will help you guys in difficult situations with students, and we'll also have time for Q&A at the end. Next slide, please. Alrighty, so let's get into some ways that College Bound has changed within the last year, and also we'll discuss what has stayed the same.
Perfect. So, it feels like it was very recently that we talked about all these amazing things with College Bound, and now we're back today, and a lot of them are not the same. And I think a lot of practitioners are aware that we had a very challenging budget season this last year now. I guess it's 2026 now, huh? The in spring of 2025. So, that really led to some of these changes in College Bound that um, are kind of a 180 from what we talked about and what we shared and kind of trained you on last year. So we wanted to talk about why that is. We know that the budget cycle is a 2-year cycle, so that's part of it, right? The money gets renewed or not every 2 years. And so there's an ebb and flow to everything. And I think the things that we can kind of keep in mind, we're all experiencing the ebb and flow together, right? We're all doing our best and don't really have, control, educators and RCAMs. We don't have control over our budget, over the college bound budget rather. So really what we can think about is how can we keep our messaging consistent for students and talk about these things without kind of flipping them back and forth each year. So that's what we'll also think about today as we talk about the legislative updates and changes and kind of figure out, how can we talk to students about this. I also think students understand, even middle school students understand that, our state of the world, our state of our country is in a very weird place. So, and this past budget cycle was kind of a product of that, trying to kind of make up for a lot of the federal changes. The state budget really had a lot of changes. So just to kind of put that out there. So some of the two kind of major changes that we'll talk about today, is the enrollment eligibility and then the funding window, which was really amazing kind of info that we talked about last year, and unfortunately is not where we're at this year, and for next year as well, obviously. Um, the enrollment window. So last year we talked all about how certain students that did college credits during high school that satisfied the enrollment requirement. That is no more this year. So any college credits earned in high school do not satisfy the college bound enrollment requirement, right? Of earning at least one college credit within a year of graduating high school. So college credits earned in high school don't satisfy that. Amber will go a little bit deeper into that on the next slide. The other major change that we have is the funding window. And they have this big, beautiful expanded funding, window of 6 years and no expiration, but that has really changed. So there is a 6 years of funding and there's 6 years only, and it's expires, right? It doesn't last forever. So starting this academic year, starting this past fall, the funding is only available for 6 years or their first bachelor's degree, whichever comes first, right? So if they haven't finished a bachelor's degree by the end of 6 years of funding, then the college bound funding would end as well, even though they haven't earned a bachelor's degree. And the timer starts on this 6 years of funding the day that they enroll in college. So the day they are enrolled in college, that's when their timer starts for that 6 years of college bound funding. Um, yeah.
So there is some good news in terms of things that have stayed the same. The enrollment window of how students are deemed eligible. So that means that they have 1 year between high school graduation and to enroll in college. That still holds true. So that is positive. However, as Melissa said, anything earned during high school, such as college in the high school or running start credits, will no longer be eligible for this enrollment window. So it does not satisfy that enrollment piece. Any college credits that are earned will have to be after high school graduation, and then in order to be deemed eligible, they will have to receive at least that one college credit. And then afterwards, they can take a break, and that funding will not expire for 6 years. So it's just that one college credit to be able to be eligible, but hopefully they do stay enrolled. Next slide, please.
Yeah, perfect. The other two changes that we see, the first one, which is a great change that I know the WASAC team and our legislators were kind of working on for the last couple of years, was the graduation requirement. It used to be that students had to graduate with a high school diploma in order to receive college bound. Now they can graduate with either a high school diploma or a GED. So that really opens up opportunities for our open doors students or other students that choose to do the GED route and still have college bound funding. So that's a great kind of step forward. The last change, and probably the one that I think is the most confusing in terms of our students, is the funding reduction. And basically, the thing to remember is that it's really only affecting private 4 and 2 year colleges that will see this change this year and next year. And we'll talk about more of that. But I want to say that, we're talking about college bound here. Obviously, it ties into and it comes from the same pot of Washington College Grant. But in terms of the funding reduction for college bound, it's really just looking at private and 2 year colleges that we're going to see the reduction.
So, as Melissa was talking about earlier, we all know that Washington State has been hit hard in terms of funding. This is going to have a large effect on the awards that we see moving forward. The positive news there's going to be no change for funding levels at students who are enrolled in public 2 year and 4 year schools. However, those who are attending private 4 year nonprofit or private 2 year not for profit will be seeing some changes. So, private 4 year, for example, for WA Grant and College Bound, they will receive 50% of the average award. So, this, is really going to affect some students who are used to seeing higher amounts, and they're going to have a deficit moving forward, unfortunately, with some of these more expensive schools. Private 2 year and 4 year for profit will no longer see these awards. Washington Governors University will see a slight increase in awards, and apprenticeships will still have WA Grant to fall back on, but will not see college bound anymore. Next slide, please. Alrighty, so we've given you a whole lot of information, so let's try to put it all together and condense and simplify it for you. So many of the college bound requirements are actually staying the same. Students still need to graduate from a high school in Washington or earn a GED in order to be eligible. Students attending a 4 year school still need to have that 2.0 GPA requirement. If they're going to a 2 year or technical school, there is no GPA requirement. So that still opens up a lot of possibilities for our students. They do still have to meet that enrollment deadline of 1 year and have no felony convictions. And FAFSA and WASFA, more important than ever, we really want to see our students get these funding. So in order for income and residency requirements to be verified, that is why that FAFSA and WASFA piece is so important. There are 60 participating colleges and universities in the state of Washington where state aid will be awarded. And then also students still need to maintain satisfactory academic progress in order to be eligible for these funds.
Wonderful. Um, yeah, so we wanted to kind of, like I said, we wanted to put it all together with also how can we talk to students about this sort of changes, but also keep the messaging the same. And I think the thing to remember is the core of College Bound. Especially for our middle school students, they're not really necessarily thinking about, or most of them, I should say, are not necessarily, let me look at different colleges and figure out where I'm going to college right now, right? They are focused on, middle school and maybe thinking about high school. So really focusing on staying the same for them is talking about the program and the intention, which is for College Bound, it's trying to make college an option for all Washington families, no matter their income level. And that hasn't changed. That's still College Bound is, working together with the Washington College Grant to really work to make sure that our low-income families and our income-eligible families for College Bound are having access to college at the same rates as as are their other income parts, basically. And getting enrolled hasn't changed either. We still need families to enroll in seventh and eighth grade to fill out that SNEEB, the most beautiful sounding acronym we've heard in a long time, right? Um, and making sure that if you are a middle school practitioner or working with middle school families, that even means housing authorities, any sort of after school program that where you have middle schoolers, really making sure they fill out the SNEEB with their school or their school district. And it used to be called the Family Income Survey or the Free and Reduced Price Lunch Application. Those have gotten combined, right? Same always as we talked about last year. They combined them into the SNEEB in order to make it more clear that, it's not just for free lunch, it's for other educational benefits as well, which is what the B stands for, right? So really that's the messaging in middle school is really let's get you enrolled in this so that you can have access to extra funding when it comes time for college. And the student requirements, mostly besides the enrollment piece of not being able to earn credits in high school, most of the student requirements have stayed the same, right? They need to graduate high school, no felony convictions, and there is an enrollment deadline, meaning they needed to have some sort of college going on within a year of graduating from high school. And so most of that, besides the being able to earn credits in high school part, has stayed the same. So really focusing on these things. And again, like I said, we don't know how that's going to continue to change and shift, right? So it could be in a few more years that they can earn credits in high school. We really don't know. There's no way for us to control that. So what we can do is talk to our students that we have this year about what's going on this year and really focusing on what's staying the same this year. Very similar for our high school students rather, in that you can also think about like the program and its overall intention. And but in high school, it's about, reminding them that you can use this for college and making sure they're, getting graduating high school and talking to them about that FAFSA and WASFA, like Amber mentioned, right? Getting them to fill out the FAFSA and WASFA so that they can get those college bound funds. That's where you get college bound through is through your FAFSA or WASFA. Um, and for high school getting enrolled, as I mentioned here in the slide, there's not a lot of enrollment that happens in high school. There's, it's a few students, a small handful maybe that you might come across for my high school practitioners. Ninth graders, if their income has changed from eighth grade and now in ninth grade, all of a sudden they are, something happened and their income is lower. Now they can complete that SNEEB and be enrolled in college bound starting in ninth grade. But if they were still eligible in eighth grade and they just didn't get signed up for some reason, that can't happen in ninth grade. So no other high schoolers besides those newly eligible, income eligible in ninth grade can enroll. So there's not tons of enrollment happening in high school. It's mainly in middle school area, but just to be able to watch out for those ninth graders who might have had some sort of family change, work life change in their family that makes them now eligible. And they can fill out the SNEEB just to check and see if they can get enrolled in a college bound. Okay. That was all the legislative updates and like the putting it together, all the info. We just transferred right to you, right? Now is the super fun part. And actually, last year, this was the favorite for a lot of you. So I think it is actually the super fun part. I'm not being sarcastic, even though everything I say sounds like I'm being sarcastic, I swear. We're going to do scenarios. We're going to talk through some of the questions we get or that we see that we have questions about even, and talk through what the actual answer is and why and all that good stuff. So we're going to talk through this together. And we're gonna have like the question, and then in the chat you can pop in like what you think the answer is. So it's time for attendee participation, my friends. Woot woot. So we're gonna get started, and Amber and I are gonna kind of tag team these together and get it going.
Okay, let's see. First scenario of the day. If a school provides free lunch to all of their students, are all of their students auto-enrolled in College Bound? Please put your answers in the chat and we will talk through this.
We already got to know. I'm so excited about that.
I love the confidence in it, though.
I know. Caps and an exclamation point. Committed. It's committed. We wish. We really, really do. Wouldn't that be great? It's like they're just wanting to give more work to all of our school counselors. I don't know. It's just this thing they do. Yes. Great. Thank you all. That's amazing. It is a big ol' no. And for extra credit, oops, let me get to the thing here. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Adrian. Yes. So yeah, for extra credit here, they are not, they need to fill out that SNEEP form, right? So that's like that's the piece that gets them enrolled is that form. Some might be already automatically enrolled, and you would be able to see that in your portal. If they are. But if they're not in your portal, there is no harm, literally no harm in having them fill out that SNEEB and turning that in so that we can make sure before their student graduates 8th grade that they get into College Bound if they're eligible. Yeah.
All right, let's see if we can trip you guys up. We'll see. A student and their family moved to Washington State and began attending 8th grade halfway through the year. Would the student be eligible to enroll in College Bound? Please tell us your thoughts.
Yes, what do you think? I even almost tripped Amber up with this one when I was like, "This is my thinking," and she was like, "What? Oh, right, right, right." So yes, this is a tr kind of tricky one. Would they be able to enroll in College Bound? Would they be eligible for it? They complete a SNEEP in 9th grade. So they came halfway in attending. So they're still in 8th grade. So they're halfway through 8th grade. Um, so they're not in 9th grade yet. So if an 8th grader comes halfway through the year and they were from out of state, can they enroll in College Bound? And yes, Crystal, thank you. Filling out that SNEEB. What do we think on this one? I know we didn't get really into details on this one. Any other thoughts? Any thoughts? We have a yes if they fill out the SNEEB, if they fill out the SNEEB in 9th grade, which we'll talk about. Other thoughts on this one? I'm gonna wait for one more. One more no or yes. Something. It's a 50-50 chance that you might get it right. They have to be a Washington resident. Yes, they will only receive if they grad. Yeah, so this was kind of the trick here. And this is why I put this one in here. It gets a little confusing, right? To be eligible to sign up for College Bound, there is no residency requirement. So they could enroll the moment they start attending school in Washington. The moment they start attending in 7th or 8th grade, they can enroll. Assuming they meet the income eligibility requirement. And yes, they would need to 100% complete that SNEEB. You need to get them into that SNEEB the moment they start school, right? The residency piece doesn't come into effect until they complete that FAFSA and WASFA and are wanting to use the College Bound funding. So to get enrolled into College Bound, they're not checking and seeing, have they been living here for a year? Or are they a Washington resident? Really, to get enrolled in College Bound, they're checking the income and that's it. And so they will enroll them into College Bound. It's not until then they fill out that FAFSA or WASFA in senior year of high school that then it gets checked their residency, how long have they been living in Washington, their income, and all that other, good standing, all that kind of stuff. So the enrolling, filling out that SNEEP part, if you have a student that starts at any point in 7th and 8th grade, they can definitely fill out that SNEEB and get enrolled if they are income eligible. Yes. The 9th grade thing, they actually, I don't know that they would or not because the thing with ninth grade is that it's not if they just moved here in ninth grade, it's if their income changed from eighth grade to ninth grade. So that one would be tricky. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that one, Amber. If they moved here and started in ninth grade.
So if they started in ninth grade, they would not
Right,
be eligible. But this way, in this scenario with the student being here halfway
yes.
through eighth grade, if the family fills out the SNEEP report, he's not income eligible, he will not be enrolled during eighth
Right,
grade. But in
right.
ninth grade, if the income is lower, and that SNEEP form is filled out, then yes, he would be eligible.
Oh,
And I just want to
great.
give kudos to Melissa for this question because I think it pulls in a lot of different factors,
Good.
which is one of the reasons why it's so tough sometimes to answer these questions because there's so much to think about.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And there's also so many pieces, right? Like this is an art like a whole law, right? A whole thing. So it's like there's the enrolling and there's the enrollment requirements, there's the eligibility and receiving. So there's so many different pieces here that we have to think about. And so it can get kind of mushed together. So I have had this question before, and so that's why I wanted to put it out here because I think it's a good one to think about if you have a seventh and eighth graders, and even if they just moved here, have them fill that out, see if they're income eligible, all that good stuff. Yes. Okay. Oh, there we go. We answered that bonus. It's like I knew what I was gonna be thinking in the webinar and I put it on there already and like didn't even remember. I'm so on it. Yeah, so if they moved to Washington at the beginning of ninth grade, they would not be eligible, right? Just like we talked about with Amber. But if you had them fill it out in eighth grade and then their income changed and they weren't eligible in eighth grade and all of a sudden the income changed, then they could fill it out in ninth grade. So there has to be that seventh and eighth grade connection in order for them to be newly eligible in ninth grade. Otherwise, ninth graders are themselves, like if they moved in ninth grade to Washington in ninth grade, then they're not eligible.
Alrighty, so we have a pretty good group. You guys have been doing really well. So let's see what you guys think about this one. If a student is listed in the College Bound portal, but College Bound is not listed on their financial aid offer letter, what are some reasons that the offer letter does not include College Bound? Let's talk about it.
I know we're asking like a non-yes and no question. Change in the parents' income. Crystal's on it. Crystal's like, I did not come to play. I'm here. Yes, that is definitely a great reason. If the income has changed, if the income level has changed, and that's kind of what the FAFSA-WASFA checks for, is that income requirement. What else do we got? They're out of income. Yeah, or they aren't in a Washington school. Thank you. Yes, enrolled in college more than a year after completing high school. Ooh, you all are. I'm impressed with this group. They're on it, Amber. They're like, I know my reasons here. Let's see. Let me see. Here we go. Okay, yes. So the reasons that you all talked about are totally true. If there was a change in the parents' income and luckily their parents are now earning it, then they may not be eligible. Um, if it is a private for-profit, yes, then they would not be eligible, right? It stopped being covered this year or next year, Amber? Next year, yes. This year?
This year.
This
Yes.
year. There we go. Um, and yeah, if they're now out of the income bracket, or if they're going to college and they're a college bound student, but they're not going to college in Washington State, right? They can only use college bound in Washington State because it's state funding. It's coming from our state economy, so you can't use it out of state. And yeah, if they miss that enrollment window of more than 1 year after completing high school, then they would not see college bound as well. So that's definitely a reason. The other thing is if their cost of attendance has already been filled by other grants, or they've already received the maximum state aid. So there's a number of like, this is the most state aid that a student can get between Washington College Grant and College Bound. If they've already received that number, then they also wouldn't see College Bound on their award letter either. And I would say award letters, do scholarships count? It depends. That's a great question, Kathy. It really depends on the scholarship. So some scholarships count against the cost of attendance. Like, if it's, especially like if it's an institutional scholarship, like at UW, they have an undergraduate grant or like a fellowship or scholarship for different programs, things like that. If it comes from the institution, then it counts against their cost of attendance and it would impact the rest of their aid that they get. So it really depends on the scholarship. And usually you can, like, it depends on where the funding for that scholarship is coming from. If it's coming from the institution or from Washington State, then it will impact their cost of attendance. Usually, if it's a private, scholarship or a foundational scholarship, it doesn't, but that's not across the board, and you'd want to check with the scholarship to make sure. Our school gives a lot of private scholarships to our education. Yeah, that's a great question. I would, I don't think it would, but honestly, the like office that awards the scholarships, you would ask them to make sure that doesn't affect their cost of attendance because it kind of depends on how it's awarded and where it's laid out. Yeah, but I have seen that where a student loses College Bound from their financial aid award letter um, because they all, like, all of a sudden got a new scholarship, and so it decreases the rest of the aid. So scholarships a lot of times get applied first, and if it's some sort of institutional scholarships, a lot of times it can affect their cost of attendance. Yes, that's a great point. They could increase their budget at their college. They would have to appeal to kind of say I've had like an increase in costs. Sometimes that's successful, sometimes it's not. That's a great thing to add to it. There's definitely ways that you can support students on that if you feel like it's negatively impacting, or say like they have a high student aid index or something like that, and so they're trying to get things to cover, and it's just taking all the money out and still ending at zero, right? Um, so yeah, all good questions. I will say the other thing I'll say is that our next webinar in this series is actually about financial aid award letters, and we're going to look at College Bound specifically as well. And there we'll have a scenario that's looking at College Bound so that we can kind of get into this nitty gritty of that kind of stuff, of these kind of questions. And each scholarship, it really depends, like talking to the scholarship office or the office that awards a scholarship to understand how they disperse it and if it will affect the cost of attendance. Yeah. Um, and just a reminder on this, on our question in terms of not seeing it on their financial aid award letter each year. So we always get one of the common misconceptions is that practitioners will say, oh, well, their income changed, or we don't see it on their financial aid award letters, so I guess they're no longer eligible. Once the student is enrolled in College Bound in seventh and eighth grade, they're in it. But whether or not they can receive the funding is checked every year they fill out a FAFSA or a WASFA. So every year they fill out that FAFSA or WASFA, that financial aid office will do the calculations to see, does this student qualify to receive those college bound funds? They have the college bound funds, they qualify for it, they're enrolled in it. Can they receive it? Do all the conditions line up for them to receive it, right? And so that's what will be checked every time they fill out that FAFSA and WASFA. They'll see if they're income eligible, if they're in satisfactory academic standing, all that good stuff. If they still have if they still have any of the 6 years left, the cost of attendance, all that kind of stuff, they'll look to see if any college bound can be applied. Um, and I also want to say in the most recent presentation from WASAC on College Bound, it does also talk about the book stipend. And we've been asking a lot of questions about that with and talking to WASAC a lot about that because it doesn't show up as any different. It just gets put onto that financial aid award letter. So a lot of times, and it's actually really common that when we see it on the financial aid award letter, we see it as $500 for the year. That $500 is the book stipend. And so it's not that it's going to get dispersed directly to the student. So say it, their tuition's paid, but they still had state award left, then they might see the book stipend on there. But it could get applied to other things. It's not necessarily going to get to the student. And that's kind of what we're going to get into that nitty gritty in the financial aid award letter webinar. So definitely sign up for that if you have questions on that. Okay, let's keep going and we'll go through some more questions. Um, and yeah, we'll work through questions later on as well. Okay, next scenario, Amber.
All right, so let's talk about time off. Let's say that a student attends their local community college for the fall term right after high school graduation. They pass their classes and then they take some time off due to various reasons. It could be limited financial aid funds, or they have a high SAI and maybe they need to work for a while before they can return, or parents won't contribute, any other reason. Do they meet the enrollment requirement, and would they still be able to receive college-bound funds in the future?
Yes, so let's get back to our tried and true basics of our college bound here. As long as they earn one credit, yes, they need to meet the enrollment requirements. All good points. What else do y'all think? Is there a certain year window that they need to consider when they are considering taking time off? What would that number? Oh, 6 years. Thank you. These our CSF folks coming through, even when you've moved on to bigger and better things. Yes, so exactly right. That timer, they can take time off and the timer is still running. Very well put. Yeah, so definitely they can take time off if they've earned that at least one college credit. They meet the enrollment requirement, assuming all the other conditions, right? The income eligibility and residency and all that good stuff. If they return to college before the 6 year window, they would still be eligible for college bound funding as long as they still meet the other requirements, right? Income eligible, satisfactory academic standing, they don't owe any money to the college, all that good stuff. So there is still a possibility that they would be able to use the college bound funds. They wouldn't have, 6 years left if that because that timer is still going, but they could still have at least a year or two left or however much when they come back. So still a possibility.
All right, next scenario. A college-bound student earns an associate's degree using college-bound funding for 2 years, then works or is not in college for 5 years. Then they decide to earn their bachelor's degree at a Washington college. Is this student eligible to receive college-bound funds when they return to college?
Okay, what do we think here? Seeing no, the time limit has passed. We see a no. Yeah, I wanted to try and work with that 6 year with that number again, right? Yeah, so since the timer of the 6 year window started the day they enrolled in college, it would now be past the window of 2 years in college plus 5 years working, so having them around 7 years. So it would be a no for that. But again, this is just college bound. There's still other grants and aid that would still be available, especially if they're still working toward their first bachelor's degree. So for college bound, it's a no.
So, a college-bound student in junior or senior year of their high school is enrolled in one community college class for Running Start and passes the class earning college credit. Does this satisfy the enrollment requirement?
Y'all were paying such good attention. No, it was just popping in right away. Nope, nope. Yeah, so this is, yes, exactly. It has to be one credit outside of high school. Exactly right. Yeah. So because they're still in high school with a legislative change starting on July 1st of last year, they have to have graduated high school before they can earn that college credit that would satisfy the enrollment requirements. So you all are on it, you know, you're with it. So excited to see that. I know this was kind of like a 180 from last year, so glad glad to know that you're with us on that.
Okay, we have to stump you eventually. So let's see how you guys do with this one. The student graduated high school with a 1.3 GPA and they enroll in a community college for 2 years, obtains their AA degree, and then transfers to a 4 year university to obtain their bachelor's degree. Is the student eligible to receive college bound funds when they transfer to a 4 year school?
Oh, I think we're gonna get this on this one, Amber. I think it's gonna happen. I can feel it. I already see two no's in the chat. So yeah, so we have our student. They graduate high school 1.3, but they did community college, right? They're when they graduate and they are going to community college, not 4 year college, they don't have that GPA requirement. Oh, she's running. Yes. Yeah. So this is a great one to talk about. Yeah. So basically, that GPA requirement when they graduated from high school was only for if they went to 4 year college. Since this student enrolled in community college, if they were still eligible in all other ways, their GPA wouldn't have been a barrier because they were going to community college. Some community colleges, right, have their own GPA requirements, but in this scenario, say, they still would have been able to receive college bound funding in community college, and then it resets. So it resets after that. So once they obtain their AA or even just even if they didn't even get an AA. But basically, once they're not coming directly from high school, that resets and there is no longer that thing of they have to have a 2.0 or whatever. So um, when they transfer to a 4 year, the college financial aid office is not going to look at their high school GPA to see if they would still receive college bound funding. That is no longer an issue because they're coming from somewhere else. And they would be able to receive college bound funding when they were at the 2 year, if they, satisfied all the requirements, right? Income eligible, Washington resident, eligible institution, in satisfactory academic standing, and they don't owe any money to the college. Yeah, so this was a tricky one. I know. It's a little kind of loophole. There's like one word that's underlined in the WASAC requirements. It's like directly after high school. But yeah, that's why we like to put it in here to remind you that, they have a lot of options even if they have below a 2.0. And especially with now a lot of promise programs that allow students to, have free community college, that might be a great option to get some experience in college, get their stuff back on track, figure out what they want to do before they do a 4 year university or do other kind of programs. So yes. So because relevant for this slide, Kathy asks, would you advise students to, when they graduate from high school with a below par GPA, to enroll in community college, go on to university so they can be eligible to use their college bound money? Yeah, it depends on the student. So if they, it depends on what they want to do. It depends on their goals, depends on what they're looking for, right? Um, and why, like, what was the low GPA? Was it that they don't like sitting in a classroom and so maybe they need to do something more hands-on, like an apprenticeship or things like that? Maybe they were just going through some hard things. Like, so it really depends. You want to kind of tailor it to a student situation. and lay out what their options are. Community college would be a great option. Like I said, some community colleges do require 2.0 though. So it really depends on the different programs around them to see what their options are, and to see what they can do. But I think community college or other kind of programs that would fit them is a good option. It's kind of like an in-between thing, right? It's not four-year university, but it's not just, sending them out without a college degree after high school to the workforce or something like that. So there's a lot of options of what they could do. They could do an apprenticeship, they could do a pre-apprenticeship, they could do a more professional technical program at a community college, or they could do a transfer program at a community college. There's a lot of options of what they could do. It really depends on what they feel like is right for them and where they might succeed versus what it might be open to them for their GPA. But yeah, great question.
Well, sadly, this is our final question on our financial aid college bound game show. So, a college bound graduates from a Washington high school, enrolls in college out of state, but ends up transferring back to Washington State after 2 years. Would they be eligible to receive college bound once they return?
Kathy's like, I don't know, that last one really got me. I love it. Maybe it's totally acceptable answer. Okay. I always like to do, it depends. Oh, Shashani coming with the it depends, right? Right on cue. Uh, great. Yes. I'm assuming no because they didn't apply within a year. Yeah, this is a good one, y'all. This is another tricky one. Yeah, so they would still be eligible for college bound. Basically, the college bound enrollment requirement says that a student needs to enroll in college within a year, but they don't have to, it doesn't necessarily have to be a Washington State college. So there's two different pieces that we're talking about, and I know this is what gets there's all these different columns, right? There's the enrollment requirement, and then there's receiving college bound funds, right? These are two different pieces. The enrollment requirement, they have to, graduate from Washington High School. They have to enroll within college within that 1 year of graduating. And then in order to receive college bound funds, they have to be at a Washington college, income eligibility, Washington resident, eligible institution, academic standing, all that kind of stuff, right? So they wouldn't receive college bound funding when they go out of state, but they satisfied the enrollment requirements of enrolling in college within a year of graduating high school. So if they end up transferring back and going to a Washington State college after 2 years, they still are within their 6 year window. And now, if they're going to an institution that's eligible for college bound, they would be able to receive college bound if they satisfy the other, income, Washington resident, all those other good things. So they just want to see that they went into college 1 year after high school. From what I remember, research shows that's when students are most successful, right? If they don't take too long of a gap. But they can go out of state and then come back and potentially still get that college bound funding. Yeah, so there's a lot of different pieces. I know this is a good one to think about, that can be tricky, but yeah, they would still be eligible for college bound funding. Okay. Yeah, great point, Raul. In terms of giving up residency, if I don't know if any of you ever worked with out of state students, I came up to Washington as an out of state student way back in the day, and yeah, if you're here just if you're going somewhere just to go to college, you're not considered a resident or in state in that state. So if you're just there to go to college and then you move back, you're still a resident of the state that you moved from, basically. So they would be able to retain their Washington residency, since they were there just for the purposes of being in college. Yes. Okay. So I know we got to the end of our scenarios. And we're gonna in a little bit we'll ask you to kind of share out with some ideas of how you might, something you learned that you might apply, all that good stuff. But we also want to remind you of the resources you have available to you when you're working with college-bound students or working with the college-bound program at all. So we're going to go through some resources. Shouldn't take too long, and then we'll do some Q&A, we'll do some share out, we'll do all that good stuff, okay? Okay, resources.
So we're going to start with the Washington State Achievement Council. Hopefully, you guys are no stranger to this website. This is basically your Bible, your handbook for all things college bound. Um, for any questions that you guys might have, they have an FAQ for school staff and college access professionals. Please review that before you send any information to the college bound team because they have told us that the majority of the questions that they receive are answered in here. It's very comprehensive. It can be a lot to get through, but I promise the answers to your questions are most likely in there. There's also intro flyers for both middle school and high school. These are really great resources for students that basically give a quick look at the whole college bound program, what is required to enroll, who is eligible, why they're eligible, and it also gives tables for the income requirements for both middle school students, so income requirements based on the SNEEP form, and then the high school flyer will have a income table that is basically what your median family income needs to be in order to be eligible for college bound funds once you enroll. There's also a lot of great things that you can print out, like myths and fact sheets for your students, and different resources for everybody. So, oh, and they also have PowerPoint presentations that you can share with your students. So you don't have to worry about making anything from scratch. The College Bound team has already put that together for you. So please check this out. It's really useful. Next slide, please. Washington State Achievement Council also has a lot of free materials for you guys. If you go to this QR code, it will take you to the material order forms. You can receive things such as college bound pencils and pens. You can get different books and flyers about college bound, postcards. Most orders will take 2 to 4 weeks to process and get out to you. If you have more than one person in your building that works with college bound, please double check with anybody else whether or not they have put in a recent order because there was a time where I believe like a school received 1,000 books because one person placed an order of 500 and another person also placed an order of 500, and they did not need that many books. So please communicate with people in your building before you place an order, but these are free of charge and really useful gifts to give out as well. Next slide, please. One of the things that the College Bound team and Washington and we, the RCAMs, put together for everybody were this booklet that's called Create Your Future with College Bound. So the really neat thing about this is that we have student materials that you can print with your students, and there's also educator materials such as fact sheets that will help you guide your students through these different activities. There's 5 different topics: College Bound 101, explore your career roadmap, how to find a good fit for college, goal setting, and helping high school juniors and seniors discover scholarships. Next slide. And Melissa, I'm gonna put this over to you. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, so Amber talked through the different Create Your Future materials we have. So we wanted to show you like a little amuse-bouche of what those look like and give a little image. This is the first one, and it's like exploring college-bound eligible institutions. So just looking at different colleges. So it's great for our middle schoolers and high schoolers. We have Explore Your Career Roadmap, and this uses the Road Trip Nation website and really is like a lot, very relevant for our generations that are in middle school and high school today. They are really looking at, your interests and what drives you, what your passions are to help you out. So it's a great exercise you can do with students. It's really relevant for them. Of course, we have a SMART goal checklist. So this could be like a simple goal they need to complete that year, or a long-term goal that's more relevant for college. It's just kind of a thing to be helpful for students to think about how they can start working on their goals and forming goals themselves. Okay. We also have these amazing checklists, which one of my practitioners emailed me last month to be like, hey, your checklists aren't updated for 2026. And I was like, thank you for having my back. So if any of you have looked at these in the last month or so, they were not updated. They are very newly updated for 2026. They have all the most relevant resources and all the links are working, knock on wood, right? So definitely check out these checklists if you are a practitioner that works with college-bound students and you're not really sure, like, what am I supposed to be doing with this? These are the lists that can help you look at, have I done this? Have I done this? Have I done this? Do I have time to do this? Do I have time to do this? Do I have time to do this? Okay. WASAC also, every Wednesday they have like a Q&A webinar space. Rather every first Wednesday of every month, not every Wednesday. That would be a big load for them. The first Wednesday of every month, they have a webinar space there where you can ask questions, you can get clarifications from them. They're a great resource. They are the experts on College Bound. We just kind of help, share the info that they have. So, definitely a great resource if you feel like you frequently have tricky college-bound situations. It'd be a great place to get help with specific scenarios or student situations. This is just a slide looking at all those resources that we talked about. We have different college-bound resources, different WASAC resources. Again, this will be sent out in the email. And then this is talking about how you can partner with WASAC. WASAC is a great resource. They are kind of the go-to on College Bound. So definitely someone to reach out to if you have questions. And just emailing the College Bound email, you'll be able to, and if you don't know who to email, right, just emailing the College Bound team, they'll get you to who can best help you. But this is the team at WASAC that works with College Bound, a great team and very knowledgeable to be able to access. And then the RCAM team, who's with you today. We are basically your one-stop shop for anything college access related. With our shift, we were also affected by the state budget, right? And with our shift from being CBROs to being regional college access managers, we were able to really step into what we'd already been doing informally. We help with anything from career exploration to like really nitty-gritty financial aid applications and scenarios, financial aid appeals, scholarship support, all that kind of stuff. So we are really the one-stop shop if you need something in terms of training for your staff or just support for your district or your school. That's really what we can help you with. So we're going to go around and introduce the whole team is here. Amber had to hop off early because she's like the busiest of the busy bees. But so I'm going to introduce myself and we'll kick it around to the other team. Like I said, my name is Melissa, and I specifically work in the King County region. Let's see, Raul, do you want to kick it off after that?
I really don't, but I guess I will. My name is Raul Sanchez. I'm with I cover the north central, northeastern region of Washington state. So basically everything north of I-90, this side of the Cascades. And so here to support anybody within that region.
Raul's been keeping it down on the Q&A, so I really appreciate him for being here. And Amber, my co-presenter, she had to hop off early, like I said, but she covers the southeast and the south central region of our state. Joshua, where you at?
Hello, everyone. Joshua Morgan Griggs. I am the South Puget Sound, Southwest Washington Regional College Access Manager. That means I cover from Tacoma down to Vancouver and all the way over to the coast. So nice to see you all and to be able to potentially partner with you.
We have our newest amazing member of our team, Jocelyn. Where you at, girl?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jocelyn Ibarra. I use she, her pronouns. I am based in Everett, Washington, but I cover the region from Snohomish all the way to Bellingham, which is closer to the border, and then to the peninsula area as well.
Yes, we're covering the
Yeah.
whole state, my friends. Thank you, RCAMs. Appreciate you. Okay, so like I mentioned, we do have two other webinars coming up as part of this Lunch and Learn practitioner series. So our next one on March 10th is the financial aid award letters, and we're going to talk through. We have examples from covering the whole state. We are really lucky because we were able to reach out and get different examples from actual award letters from around the state. So we'll have some different sample award letters, or rather example award letters, that to work through, talk about the best way to kind of help your students decide and look at some tricky situations, all that good stuff. And then lastly, for March 24th, we have a webinar about apprenticeships. So we're going to talk about some of the frequently asked questions, different areas you can do apprenticeships. We're going to talk about, professional technical degrees, all that kind of stuff that would be considered on the apprenticeship pathway, and the different funding and opportunities for that in Washington State, which is really increasing. I don't know if you noticed, there was a news article. There's been several news articles in the last few months about the really dramatic increase of professional, technical, and apprenticeship opportunities in Washington State. So definitely something for us to share with our students. Okay, so that post-training survey Amber talked about in the very beginning is now here. And this is where the raffle comes in as well, my friends. There is a link that Jocelyn posted in the chat. It's a short survey, I promise. A short survey. The first thing you'll need to do is select which training you are wanting to evaluate. So you'll make sure that you select the College Bound Updates and Scenarios from February 24th, which is today, and complete that. If you enter your email, you'll be able to enter into the raffle, and we'll email out about that next week. Okay, it is share out time. The time that helps you to get all the clock hours that you've ever wanted. So this is our share out. I'd love for you to pop in the chat something that you will be planning on implementing from the webinar today, or information that you learned that you now are going to be able to tell students about or clarify for students, share with your students, all of that good stuff. What information do you feel like was helpful for you? What are you going to integrate into your work? All that good stuff. I want to hear it in the chat. You could also unmute if you want to say it. Oh my God, unmute. I know it's like having a phone call nowadays. Blasphemous. I'm aware. But you could if you want to. And we will go into Q&A after this, but we will do a little share out here. What was most helpful for you today? Did the scenarios really help you out with some of the situations that you see with your students? Was it just learning about the different updates from the legislation and what is going on? Was it about the resources that are available to you that you don't have to create on your own, that are already there waiting for you to pop your name in? Oh, perfect. Yes. Great. Okay. So keeping up with annual legislative updates, they do change from year to year. Those rascals always trying to legislate and stuff. Yeah, Crystal, thanks. The financial aid award letters and college bound is definitely a tricky one. So that's a great thing to take away. Yeah, Kathy, great. Definitely, talking to students about that have a lower GPA and what their options are for post high school. We still want them to, be able to make a living wage, right? That's always the goal in life, yeah. Funding changes, keeping in mind funding changes when answering financial aid. Yeah, many of your students, good to know, Faye. Yeah, definitely some funding changes coming up that could, affect decisions of where a student might decide to go to college depending on that funding change. Glad to see the scenarios were helpful. That is definitely something that we try and, do real world. How does all this legal language and legislative language apply out in the real world when we're working with our students? So glad those were helpful. Definitely keep popping those into the chat. Would love to know other ways that it was helpful to you or something that you feel like you might implement from today. And then I'm going to stop sharing so that we can talk about questions um, that you all might had that came up. Raul, any questions from the Q&A that might be helpful to go over in the big group? Anything like that?
Well, apparently you've done a really good job covering the information and details because there's been no Q&As coming in. Everything that's been asked in the chat at least has been covered, so we're good to go.
Perfect. There was the question that got popped into the chat that I wanted to address. I know Joshua answered it as well. We definitely support our foster students. And I'm going to scroll back up to it so I can actually.
Do you want me to
Yes, here we go.
tell it to
I
you?
got
Oh,
you. I got you. Yeah, we definitely work with students who are in foster care or guardianships, um, whether that be, financial aid or, scholarships or things like that. I definitely second um, what like Shoshone said about the passport program. I think that was, yeah, about the passport program. That's also a great resource. But yeah, so we support students in anything related to accessing college. So no matter their identity or their life experience, we support them with college access. So that includes our foster students and students that are in guardianship. To be honest, I would say a majority of the students that I support have like non-traditional, complex family situations. I do work with foster care students, and we've had a lot of conversations about guardianships because the language in FAFSA doesn't necessarily match the reality of what guardianship looks like, stuff like that. So we definitely work with students, no matter their life experience or their identity. We support students with college access. So we definitely work with students in foster care and guardianships. Yeah, so I want to make sure to pop that in there as well, along with the other great answers that were provided. Any other questions or things that have come up that we haven't talked about? What supports are available for students while they are enrolled in college? For these students, do you mean for like foster care students, foster youth, or just
No,
any
no, I
students?
just meant, are there supports available for students who are first gen enrolled in college? Maybe they don't know to go get tutoring or managing their schedules or you know what I mean? Just that
Yeah.
whole kind of wraparound piece to help them be successful in
Yeah.
college. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Totally makes sense, Kathy. I was definitely a first gen student, so I 100% know what you mean. It was a steep learning curve getting into being in college and like all of a sudden having all these things. So it really depends on where they go to college and who they are. There are things like the TRIO program that are great for first gen students. Yeah, thank you, Crystal. Yeah, so TRIO that's available that's great for first gen students. If there's also other like if they're a foster youth or there's other programs available at colleges specifically for foster students, um, students that are considered provisionally like independent or at risk of homelessness, self-sustaining. They have programs for them as well. So it really depends on the student situation. If they are a student of color, there's a lot of times student groups in particular support for students that might be like wanting to form community at where they're going to. And I will also say a lot of colleges nowadays have like a kind of college 101 or college success programs. I always encourage students to take those, even if they're like, oh my God, this sounds so boring. You know, students, when they go to college, they want to take something fun. I want to choose a class I want to take. And I'm like, I get it. Choose this class and that class that you want to take, but this third one, take this thing. And so I do think that that's a great thing to talk to students about of, you know, the success at college, it's not an inherent thing that we all have. It's really learned skills. And not all of us learn those skills depending on our high school experience or our home experience. And so being able to take that and look at, you know, how can I best take notes? How can I best study and prepare for a test? You know, what are the different ways that I learn best and being able to connect with professors, things like that. So definitely taking those like College 101. Adrian mentioned like the summer bridge programs or first year experience programs. Those are great things to take for students, especially first gen students. I will say as a first gen student, I didn't take that because I was like, I don't want to. I was like trying to be rebellious and I 100% regretted it within like 3 weeks of classes. So definitely something to talk to your students about, you know, how do you study for a test besides cramming all night long? Do you know how to do that yet? Okay, then let's take this class to talk about that. So definitely great resources in different colleges depending on, and they all call it something different. So just kind of looking at your area, what they call it, and what kind of resources are out there. Yeah. Questions y'all have around
There's another
college
question.
bound?
There's
Yeah,
another
go for it.
question in the chat. It says, "How are foster kids handled?" Second question, foster adopted kids. I'm assuming this is in relation to college bound.
Yeah, so for foster youth, you know, they're in a particularly tricky situation. And so at the age of 13 or above, if they are ever in foster care, even for 24 hours, they get automatically enrolled into College Bound with DSHS. And so they get enrolled to College Bound and they have different requirements as well. They can enroll anytime between age 13 to graduating. They don't have to enroll just in seventh and eighth grade. Again, because they have a different experience, they have a different life experience. So there are a lot less restrictions on how they can access College Bound in terms of enrolling for College Bound. And then also in terms of applying for college and accessing College Bound funds, foster youth, if they are in foster care, they would check the little boxes for that in on FAFSA or WASFA and be considered independent. And so their income is the only income that they you know, consider for financial aid. So it often means that they do have more funding available to them. And besides College Bound, there is additional funding that's particular just to foster youth as well. So there's a lot of different considerations and programs for our foster youth to try and give them those supports. And I would say, depending on what area you're in, there can be some good programs. I think the biggest thing for foster youth is that they don't really have an adult in their corner. Their caseworker with DSHS is not it, right? That's not their person in their corner for the most part. So, you know, trying to get them connected with a program where there can be an adult in their corner, I think is a really important thing, whether it be a nonprofit or a program at a college. You know, I think that's like a really big kind of piece for those youth to have someone that they can to go to. And yeah, great. Cherry mentioned a Step Up program in the region. I know in King County area we have, although I think they're statewide, Treehouse is a great one as well. They support foster youth, mostly I think in Seattle, but they do have foster youth in other areas as well. Okay, and Lily asked, how is tuition need determined since many colleges award aid for general cost of attendance instead of separating out money for tuition versus room and board? Is it just if the total college aid on a financial aid package has hit the same amount as the max CB award possible for that college? So while they may not separate it out on the award letter, which is a very bad form on an award letter, you should totally separate it out. There is a separate line item. So cost of attendance is all of it together, right? So usually if it's a anywhere decent financial aid award letter, it would have tuition, room and board, other expenses, things like that, transportation, all that kind of stuff. Um, and so that's where College Bound would get applied to that tuition piece if there's any owing of the tuition piece. So that's how they do it. And because it's happening at the financial aid office, right? So that FAFSA WASFA information is sent to the financial aid office at the college where the student is accepted and planning on attending. That financial aid office sends out the award letter, and they've done the calculations to see this is how much the student's going to owe for tuition, and this is the different aid available to them. Do they have any tuition owing after, Pell Grant if they're eligible, after WA Grant if they're eligible for that? Okay, then, and if they're College Bound eligible, then that can get applied basically. So it is separated out, and it is something that you should be able to see on the financial aid award letter. That being said, if it is a particularly not well clarified financial aid award letter, you can always call and ask or email and ask for a more detailed summary of the different cost amounts because they did that calculations in order to send that award letter, so they do know it. Yeah, and then with that cost of tuition, plus there is a max amount of state aid. So there's not a max amount. Well, there's a max college bound award, but it's more about what is the maximum amount of state aid a student can receive, and did the Washington College Grant already exceed that? If not, then and they still have tuition owing, then we can apply college bound, right? And then if they exceeded the maximum state aid, that's when kind of it gets cut off with that. But mainly that would be an issue, like if it was like a private or something like that. I don't necessarily see that often on like public, definitely not community colleges, but even public institutions, depending on where you're going or I guess what the year is. But yeah, great question. It should be on the financial aid award letter, and if it's not, you can definitely email them and ask them for a more detailed award letter amounts and around the cost of attendance line items. And that is something we'll talk about in the financial aid award letter webinar as well. And we'll show examples and of, all that good stuff. I love that people are sharing resources in the chat. Like, love it. It gives me life. Love the expertise and the knowledge and being able to share that with each other and our networks and all that kind of stuff. So thank you for doing that, for sharing different resources. Yeah, okay. Any other questions? You can also feel free to hop off if you filled out that post-training survey or you don't have any questions. You can definitely feel free to take back, your 8 minutes. We have 8 minutes left or 7 minutes now. If you have any other questions around College Bound, definitely feel free to either unmute and ask or pop it in the chat, and we'll hang out for a few more minutes and see if there's any other questions before we stop the recording. But yeah, if you don't have questions, thank you so much for coming. Thanks for hanging with us. Yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
I sure can, Jennifer. How's
Oh,
it going?
good. Hey, I do have a question about
Yeah.
the newly eligible in ninth grade. Does that
Yeah.
mean they need to fill out a SNEEB in eighth grade and then be found uneligible and then reapply in ninth grade? Like, how do they know that? Does College Bound know that their finances have changed between eighth and ninth grade?
Typically that is the case, but if you know that um like if the family is like I lost my job or basically they know their income has changed and they can talk to you about why, you can fill out the SNEEB in ninth grade as well.
Okay, so they don't need to have filled it out previously. And then do I somehow say do they send a letter saying my our circumstances have changed?
So they do have to have fill it out. They had to have fill it out in seventh or eighth grade, and
Okay.
then they would fill it out again. But Raul, because don't you think if they were like if there was a way that I don't know, I guess so they had to have.
Well, what if they were doing financially very well and so didn't bother filling it out in seventh and eighth grade, and then both parents lost their job in ninth grade, and then they would be eligible, but you have no data to prove that it's changed.
So that's where the website is very clear, where it says what makes a ninth grader newly eligible: be enrolled in Washington school, not income eligible for free reduced price lunch. Well, actually, that's where we need to get
Right.
some clarification. It just says not income eligible. It doesn't say,
Yeah,
I
my
think that's
understanding
that they
because
applied, then they were told they're not income eligible, and then they do it again. That's what I think is
well,
what
so
it means with
we would
that.
need to
Yeah.
get clarification, Jennifer, I think, because my
Hmm.
understanding, because when I've actually done paper applications before for a few schools, and um, it's more of like a declaration. So I think that I think we can ask WASAC, we can ask College Bound that information, but if their income has changed, then they can, I would say have them fill out the SNEEB
Okay.
and go ahead and do it because I think that it's more about um, it's more about that their income has to show they're income eligible at that point. And then when they get checked again in, senior year, they'll check to see if they're still, eligible for College Bound. But I would say go ahead and have them fill out the SNEEB. I'm going to send an email and I'll CC you on it just to get clarification from College Bound at WASAC on that. To see what their input would be on that. But my understanding would be that if their income has changed, like if the parents lost their job and their income has now fallen into the eligibility bracket, that they would go ahead and fill out the SNEEB, definitely.
Okay, and then they wouldn't get enrolled in automatically so then there has to be some kind of follow-up with to
So the automatic just means the SNEEB.
So
Um, the,
yeah, if they're eligible for free reduced price lunch in ninth grade and they filled out the SNEEB and it shows they're eligible, then they're automatically enrolled in College Bound.
What they
Oh,
mean
okay.
by yeah, what they mean by automatically is that like you're not filling out it used to be that you had to fill out like a whole declaration with WASAC to say
Yeah,
like I'm signing up for College Bound, right? You probably remember that, yeah.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, so now they just mean like if you fill out because the SNEEB is actually through OSPI, right? It's not through WASAC. So what they mean by automatically is that like OSPI is going to share that info with us automatically. And so
Right.
that's what they
Okay.
mean by automatic, is that if they fill out the SNEEB, that info will get shared with us and they'll get enrolled into College Bound automatically if they're income eligible from the SNEEB.
Okay, so that's what the change is what's got me confused because let's say they were income eligible all through seventh and eighth
Yeah,
grade, but they never bothered filling out the SNEEP.
right.
They just didn't know about it or whatever. And then ninth grade comes along, like they find hear about it and when they get to high school and they fill it out. So how
Yeah.
do you know that their circumstances have changed or not? Because
Typically, it's like they're reporting it, the family
okay.
reporting it. And again, it's the same reason why like they don't have to be a resident at the time of enrolling into College Bound because they're not receiving any funding at that point. It's not until they go to apply for the FAFSA and WASFA that then they're checking all the details to see if they're eligible, right? If they're eligible to receive the money. But for ninth grade, the thing is, even if they were income eligible in seventh and eighth grade, That is something that we need help with, from our middle school practitioners, unfortunately, that they do need to get signed up in seventh and eighth, and in ninth they wouldn't be eligible unless they weren't eligible before, and really it's like kind of self-reporting and filling
Okay.
out that SNEEB. A lot of families that aren't eligible for financial or aren't eligible for free lunch rather don't fill out the SNEEB. And so if the family hasn't filled out the SNEEB before, that typically shows that they weren't eligible before, right? Because if a family um, needed their student to have free lunch and they were eligible for it, usually they'll fill that out and make sure their student gets free lunch. So if they never have filled out the SNEEB before, and that typically shows that their student wasn't, or is taken for granted as that their student wasn't eligible for free lunch.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank
Yeah,
you.
but I'll send an email to WASAC right now after we end here, and I'll CC you on it just so we can make sure that we get the correct info for you.
Great. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'll
thank
definitely
you.
be
Good
helpful for
question.
us to know.
Yeah.
I've always been confused about it.
Oh, I know. So many things about College Bound that are very nuanced.
All right. Well, thanks all. I'm going to sign off.
Thank you. Okay, Victor, is there any questions we can help you with, or are you just kind of soaking in the knowledge? Or are you on a lunch break, Victor? I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.